that he took all of this knowledge, but he turned it to what was of ultimate benefit. And he returned the many, many sciences of the religion. He took them and he returned them to their ultimate goal, which is the knowledge and the proximity of God. And that was the greatness of the man, fundamentally. He took all of these streams back to their origins. Okay, and we'll learn more about that as we go along. But this really, the Ihya is the summation of this. All of that is in the Ihya. That's what the Ihya is. It's taking all of these different sciences and putting them in their place. This is why it's so important for a student of knowledge to study the Ihya. Certainly in book 1. When you are studying, you can lose sight of the wood for the trees. When you're studying grammar, there is nothing more important to you than grammar. When you're studying fiqh is the greatest science, the best science. Huwa ashraful ulum. You read the works of the scholars, and they'll say, well, what is the role of fiqh? Huwa ashraful ulum. It's the most noble of the sciences. Then you open a book of theology. Huwa ashraful ulum. It's the most noble of the sciences. Then you open a work of hadith. Huwa ashraful ulum. Everything is Baba. Everything is ashraful ulum. Right? When you're in it, it's the most important thing to you, and you can lose sight of the interconnections. Knowledge is not in, and this is neurobiologically, psychologically, and spiritually. They're the same thing. Knowledge is not the pieces of information that you have. Knowledge is the connection between those pieces of knowledge. Knowledge is not the dots, it's the lines that connect the dots. Okay? That's what knowledge is. That's how the human brain functions. It functions by associative learning. You learn something new, that's great, but what your mind does is it links it with all other related pieces of knowledge. So that when you bring to mind one thing, it sets off, that links to that, that links to that, that links to that. That's why someone who is knowledgeable needs to be very careful, actually, that they don't digress. Because you get this trail of bread. This is how we think. You get this trail of breadcrumbs. It goes to that. Oh, it goes to that. Oh, and there's that. And it's connected to that. And it's connected to that. And what Ghazali did is he reversed Hansel and Gretel knowledge. Yes, you've got this trail of breadcrumbs, but he made sure those trail of breadcrumbs doesn't lead to the witch's cottage, the gingerbread house. The trail of breadcrumbs leads back home. So that your knowledge, when you follow that pathway of knowledge, he laid it out in such a way that everything that you're studying tahara, how does it relate to your relationship with Allah? You're studying the masail of Hajj, and when do you have to, when is there a jinayah of Hajj? When do you have to sacrifice an animal because you made a mistake on Hajj? Well, that's all great, but how does that link back exactly to knowledge of God? How does it relate back to my eternal life? Okay? You're studying, the 300 ways of divorcing your wife before breakfast. How does that link back to my eternal life, to my salvation, to my relationship with God? And Ghazali certainly was not the only person to do this. And this is one of the things that we'll learn about Ghazali as we go through. That in the Ihya, Ghazali a lot of the time is acting as, this is Ghazali an-Naqil, the transmitter. He's not saying anything new. He's not saying anything new. He's saying what was said before him. He's saying what Raghib al-Isfahani said. He's saying what Abu Talib al-Makki said. He's saying what Qushayri said. He's saying what Abu al-Harith al-Muhasabi said. He's saying what Junayd said. He's saying what Abu Bakr said. He's saying what Umar said. He's saying what Ali said. But the way he says it is the key. It's the way he says it. It's the clarity of thought. This absolute pristine clarity of thought. And he mentions this in the Ihya, in the beginning of the Ihya. But that he took that logical brain, that intense rationality, that piercing intellect, and he applied it to the science of the rectification of the heart. So it's all great to say anger, oh, anger's bad, man. Anger, oh, look at this hadith on anger. Anger is a fire that burns your good deeds like a fire burns dry wood. You shouldn't get angry. La taghdab, don't get angry. That's great. How do I avoid getting angry? Oh no, you sit down and then you lie down and yeah, okay, but why do I get angry? That's where Ghazali says there are 8 reasons you get angry. Anger is the fire. What's the kindling? What's the fuel? Pride. Fear. And he keeps on going. And then he'll take those 8 and he'll take this. It's about one thing. It's the fear of losing something. And that's why your anger drive is your self-preservation instinct. So now I've got one thing. What do I need to do then? What you need to learn is that everything is destined for you. Whatever happens for you is destined to happen to you. You can't use your power to preserve anything or to lose anything. You can't do it. Whatever happens, Allah, as soon as you got that in your head, oh, right, okay. Pride, oh, well, what are you in the eyes of God in any case exactly? Yeah? So what are you doing? You're not dealing with the anger. You're dealing with the causes of the anger. You're dealing with the psychological bases of the anger. Yes, you read A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem, but understand what you mean when you say A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem. Which shaitan are you seeking refuge from? You're seeking refuge from you. When you get angry, you're the shaitan. You're seeking refuge from yourself, from your devilish inner nature. And Ghazali explicates all this. Now, it was done before him, but not as clearly as he did it. And that's why you can pick up the Ihya, and you know what? We can read it today, nearly 1,000 years later, and you know what? It's spot on. And it speaks to the modern mind. This is the thing. Ghazali speaks to the modern mind. And when we start talking about Ghazali and philosophy and stuff, you'll see why it speaks to the modern mind. We think a certain way because of the way in which the Western education system has developed over the last 300 years, which is basically about Thomas Aquinas, Descartes, Immanuel Kant, David Hume, Locke. This is the tradition of Western philosophy that has informed what we view knowledge to be, how we know something, etc., etc., etc. Yeah? And Ghazali went through all of those phases in his own lifetime and came out the other end. Okay?